Okay, so I'm going to do a very quick analysis of my first round game in the Colorado Open. First round game was against Sullivan McConnell. He's 22-62. I'm currently 18-55. He had black, I had white. So I'm just going to run through this pretty quickly and give a few thoughts. E4, E5, NF3 and C6, Bishop B5, this is all standard. Knight C6, I've played a lot of these types of openings on online, Blitz and Bullet. So castles and then knight takes, D4, knight D6, bishop takes, pawn takes. All this leads to the Berlin, which I was hoping to get actually because I like the Berlin and I'm good at it. I've actually beat GMs with it in fast games. This would be the Berlin. But that did not happen. Actually, that did happen in my last game. So what did happen is he played knight c3. So I just kept developing. There is this move here, which I've also played quite a few times in Bullet and Blitz games. Bishop comes back. That's how I learned how to play it. And you know, it's a game. He doesn't have any massive edge from playing that pawn sec. So instead of doing that, he castled. I played d3. Is this a blunder? The engine says this is a blunder, which I don't think is possible. Maybe this is a known, like, funky line. Top games, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave played it versus Caruana. Romanov, Nitin, all these guys have played this. Engine says this is some sort of a blunder, but I don't think it is. Maybe it is. Anyway. It's saying it's a blunder because of the move that he played, but I've never heard of it. So he played d4. I took with the pawn. Takes with the knight. Bishop d7 is pretty much forced. And he took, which surprised me. So I took back with the b pawn to preserve the bishop pair. And he played bishop a4. So he obviously wants to get this to b3 and have pressure forever on f7. We both have the bishop pair. My pawn structure is slightly compromised. So I castled. He played bishop g5, which I was okay with. I knew his queen was going to come to f3. But I figured even if this happened, and I doubled my other pawns, then bishop's on an open board, an open, semi-open b-file, I figured I would be able to hold at least. And the computer agrees with me. So queen e7, queen f3 like I thought. And then I also had this bishop d4 move to stop him from being able to double this g-pawn immediately. I did miss a move here. I missed so I just put my rook on the open file. Figure he should do something with that pawn. Computer recommends e5. And I guess takes. Actually, I don't know what the line would be here. e5. What about takes with the pawn? Oh. Okay. Interesting. I hadn't even thought of him pushing that pawn. Okay, so he can push. I have to take with the bishop, and knight comes in anyway. And but I have enough pieces guarding this one, so I'm not blundering a piece or something. I wouldn't have felt super comfortable in this position, so maybe in hindsight it was better if he had played that. Okay, so he didn't play that move. He played bishop to b3 like I thought he would. And then I played queen e5, which is not the top computer move, but it's an okay move. He played bishop f4, which I didn't really consider for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I thought he was going to have to deal with this immediately, this possibility, even though I would be giving up the bishop pair and doubling, or I would be giving up the bishop pair in exchange for him doubling his pawns along this same line, which, if anything, would probably be more drawish. So he played bishop f4, and at this point I was happy to go for a queen trade because I had the bishop pair, and I'm also relatively comfortable in endgames. I know he's an NM, but I'm pretty confident in my endgame techniques, so I was okay with a queen trade here. So I played queen h5, and he declined. And here it says that this move is dubious, backing my bishop up to b6 because of, again, e5, and I need to do a little bit of study on this opening and find out why this move is strong in these sort of middle games. So it's saying push this pawn instead, and then he no more has e5. Okay, so, but I didn't do that. He pushed e5. I didn't see anything better than to take. I should have seen that this was hanging and that I could sort of counterattack that way, but I didn't. So I just took. Rook takes is stronger, but in the game that comes out of this, I didn't see that there was any sort of like winning edge. For instance, if rook takes and the queen trade happens, the computer plays like this. It gets the rook over here to the A file and then just shuffles. Like, it's very strange. So this might be holdable. That's not how it went. He took back with the bishop. And then this was my last blunder here, or this was my last sort of questionable move, because he had this move, queen c4, just very simply threatening to take my doubled pawn, and there's nothing I could do about it. So if he had gone here, you know, he just wins the pawn, and it's bishop pair versus bishop pair, so he was just a pawn up here. Not necessarily winning. Computer says plus 1.8. Sometimes those positions are holdable. And I do have this sort of as attempting to apply some pressure, but that didn't happen. He played queen to g3, and then here I was a little bit worried about him taking this pawn, but I figured if I go back here, then he'll take this pawn, I'll take this pawn, and if mass trades happen, for instance, if we went like this, say he took here, I took back, he took back, I was going to take here. It's saying I have to guard this pawn first. But the point being that once his bishop moves, and this is sort of weak, so takes back, queen takes. Okay, so he guards this pawn, and then I can't guard this one. So that's why that line doesn't work. But I could have just done this first and then taken the pawn, which I would have probably looked a little bit more into if we had actually gone into that. And the computer says this is pretty equal, so that didn't happen. But I was after he played queen to g3, I was happy. I was pretty certain that I could hold, and everything seemed relatively okay here. So we traded. Computer wants the knight to come just attack this bishop immediately, but he took my knight, which was very surprising to me. Now he gave up his bishop pair. I have the bishop pair, and to me this is just totally fine for black. I was completely fine with this. So he dropped his rook to the 7th rank, and you know, I was happy. I was just gonna try to bring a rook here and put pressure on f2. That was my plan. I didn't really consider knight here too much, but if anything, I figured he'd take and I'd fix my pawn structure. So he played a sort of slow move. He played h3. I played rook in, and then he played knight b1. And when he played knight b1, I knew that his position was not good, and was definitely, if not, how do you say it? You don't want to make backward moves. If you're being forced to make backward moves, then there's something wrong with your position. So I brought my rook back. He played g4, which I thought was a bit odd and weakening. And then my plan was to pile pressure on f2, so him playing g4 and letting my bishop come back here I was happy with, because then he wouldn't be able to guard f2 with his rook anymore. And once this knight finally moves, I just come back here. So he brings his knight back out. Oops. That's not right. So he brings his knight back out, and I saw that f2 was going to be really hard to control. Way back here, I saw that it was going to be difficult. I was also happy that he closed this up. So after this, we're back to this similar position, but his knight's, well, okay. So he tried playing knight to d1 to try to guard this, and I think he was planning on going here, but I had already seen that c5 was strong here because c4 was coming, and if he takes c4 with either the bishop or the knight, which is now here, then he opens up the attack on f2 again, and he's going to lose his rook. So I played c4, which looks weird, but it's actually a strong move. And I lied about that other one being my last mistake. I still have one more mistake in this game. So he played knight e3. Then I played c4, again for the same purpose, to get at f2. He played bishop a4. I moved my rook out. Bishop c6. And then I played my rook to d4 with the simple intention of coming to f4 and piling up even more on here. The computer is saying this is a blunder, which is really weird to me, because it's a blunder because of a4. Visually speaking, it doesn't make any sense. I can't immediately see why that's a blunder, but he plays a4 and say I continue with my plan. I still have a small edge according to the computer in this position, but it's no longer winning. And he pushes to a5, and I can kick his rook around a little bit. I can win this pawn. Well, not immediately, but it's just, I can't explain exactly why this position is somewhat back to equal after being +4, but that it is. And I don't know if he would have seen it even if he had a lot of time to look at this position, because a4 in this position, when lots of stuff is going on and you're having to worry about f2 and also c2, to see a4 is I think very difficult for most humans, although maybe a grandmaster would see it or something. So he didn't play that. He played knight to f1, which immediately gave up c2. So I took that. he played bishop here. He was going to attack this. And I was not worried too much about it. I did know that if I... there was some line where if I didn't guard... If I allowed this to happen, then he could get both rooks here. Or just... He could keep checking back and forth here with one rook, even if I had like a pin on the king. There was something going on, something strange. I had to pay attention. That's why I played rook to e4, just to cut off the connection between his rooks. So I took f2 first with check, king h1. He took his rook back, and then he played check here, which I think is a blunder because after king to f8, he can't guard his bishop anymore. So he took that pawn, and then I just attack his rook a couple times. He can't go here because of this bishop. So I attack his rook again, and now this bishop is going to fall. He played rook up. I took the bishop. Knight to d2. King e7, and it's -14. So I was pretty happy with this game. I was pretty proud of the effort, even though looking through the computer analysis, I still have made, I think, like 3 mistakes in the game. No mistakes, 3 inaccuracies and 1 blunder, and the blunder is right here. So the blunder was from having a winning advantage, fully winning advantage, to going back to a sort of a slightly better position, which in the long run versus a national master is not so bad anyway. And also, just comparing the accuracy by the computer, he had average cent pawn loss of 39 and I had 18 average cent pawn loss as black. So I'm pretty happy with the game. I gotta go. Thank you for hanging out and watching, and I'll have the next one. Sullivan's brother. I had at the end of the day, there was all kinds of confusion with the tournament organization, but I did play his brother Griffin in the next game, so I will have that game later tonight or tomorrow or something like that. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care.